So welcome to our event, Crushing It in 2021. My name's Y.Benjamin, and I'm going to host the event today. So I know a lot of you, but for those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder of Y.Benjamin, a startup consulting firm. We help founders on prep for fundraising, strategy, marketing, basically getting them to market fast. But the past year, I've been working on a new initiative as well, Startup Snapshot. Data sharing platform working to increase transparency in the ecosystem. So basically what we're doing is collecting a lot of data from founders and then sharing the insights, the benchmarks, the data points with the whole community so that founders can make more educated decisions and know what everyone else is doing. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I came to be doing this. So I worked before in the public markets. I worked in investment banking and IPOs and M&As. And when analyzing public companies, there's a lot of data available, but somehow in the startup world, there's really limited visibility. So when founders are going to make important decisions, they're left in the dark a lot of times. They don't know what's acceptable in the industry, what other companies are doing. So that's exactly what we're doing here, to collect a lot of data. In the past couple of months with these amazing partners you see here, and I'm gonna introduce them soon, we collected data from hundreds of founders. And we shared the insights in a new report that we just released on how startups are adapting to the new remote reality. It could be remote innovation, remote fundraising, remote sales. And basically, if overcoming these challenges will create some sort of competitive advantage for Israeli tech, this ability to adapt really quickly and work remotely. So you can see the full report, there's the link over there. You can see all the insights, but today we're gonna talk with the partner team to get their views on the different data points that we collected. So I'll introduce everyone that we have on the call, our partners, Yifat Oron, CEO of Leumitech, Tzachi Weisfeld, General Manager at Intel Ignite, Nimrod, Vromen, partner at Yigal Arnon, and now CEO of Consiglieri, Liat Aaronson, Chairperson of the Zell Entrepreneurship Program, and Robert Cohen, partner at Benson Ventures. And I'm also really excited to have with us founders of two amazing startups, Boaz Katz from Bizzabo and Eyal Feder-Levy from Zencity. And they shared their great stories with us in the report, but you guys will hear them today live, how they basically crushed 2020, exploded this year, and they'll share their insights for how they did that and what founders can learn for 2021. So these are basically, just so you know what's gonna happen, these are the three topics we're gonna talk about: how remote affected product innovation, sales strategy, and fundraising. And I'll leave a couple of minutes at the end for Q&A. So whoever wants to send something, send in the chat, and we'll ask that at the end. And before we get into the panel, just like one last note to wrap up, that this whole initiative is for the good of the ecosystem. So it's for the good of you guys. If you have any topics that you want us to include in our next reports, if you want to get the data, any ideas that you have, feel free to email me. My email is there. And we're going to be collecting a lot of data this year and releasing it to the community. So we'd love to include things that are really relevant to the founders themselves. So let us know. And now let's start our panel. So the first topic that we have is remote product innovation. So when COVID hit, entire industries were erased overnight and new opportunities emerged. And startups really had to adapt fast. Winning startups were the ones that were able to move quickly and adapt super quickly. In our report, the data we collected, we saw that 55% of startups changed their product due to COVID, with a quarter of those making really substantial product changes. That means basically a full product overhaul. So Bizzabo is an amazing example of this. They provided a solution to the event space, an industry that was hit super hard in COVID. But within a month, they built a new virtual conference platform, got to market, increased sales exponentially. So I want to hear from Boaz. This is the exciting story. Tell us how you managed to do this. How were you able to adapt and launch a new product so quickly?
Hi, everyone. First, thank you, Yael, for arranging it. And it's definitely a valuable report also for us as consumer and participants in the service. So definitely welcome the initiatives. In high level in Bizzabo, the short answer is we had no choice, actually. Our business was shut down in seconds. We were first line to the pandemic, like airlines and hotels. For those who don't know, Bizzabo is an event success platform. We provide in the past all the digital solutions for in-person events for medium and large companies like Amazon, Forbes, Bloomberg, Uber, Snap, and whatever. And when the pandemic hits around the end of February, we saw market crashes from 150 events a week to 0 within 2 weeks. And we actually had no other solution but to reinvent ourselves, and we kind of like we decided to move into virtual. It was a bet. Now it looks like obvious things to do, but virtual events was a segment that was trying to become a significant one over the past probably 5 years. We know startups around virtual events, and it never succeeded. And also in Bizzabo, we always said virtual events will never work. Face-to-face is all about business, and this is what will keep going, and we try to avoid the virtual solution for long times. But again, when we saw COVID-19 starting, we just stopped everything we're doing. We decided to put all the money, like all in, for those who play poker, all in. We stopped everything we did, including some big legal commitment for big organization regarding product roadmaps and stuff like this, and decided to put all our working powers on virtual. I think the most interesting part was probably that we didn't go into an MVP like all the good startups. We decided to go full blown from the first day because we were familiar with the markets and the need, and we saw an opportunity to provide the best virtual solution out there within weeks. We saw it working after probably 1.5 or 2 months. We launched it within 4 weeks almost. So if you ask me what we did, we took an educated bet, but we actually were facing the wall, and if we were doing nothing, the company would probably shut down.
That's a crazy story. And Zencity is also a crazy story, but in a different way. So yeah, about this, when COVID struck, Zencity took advantage of a new opportunity and moved really quickly to develop new features to help their clients, whether it was municipalities or governments, manage the pandemic. So to me, it's really interesting. How were you able to innovate so quickly for a need that no one really understood? Bizzabo really knew their market well, and they knew their clients, but here it was managing a global crisis that no one had encountered before. So how are you able to innovate for an unknown need?
Well, thank you, Yael. First, I want to join Boaz in thanking you and all the partners in putting this together. It's very exciting to have a chance to look back at 2020 and feel like we came out of it winning. So I think in our industry, a little bit different from Boaz's case, the industry didn't shut down. On the contrary, they accelerated. All of a sudden, they had to work, instead of a 9-hour day, they had to work an 18-hour day. Because local governments, in many senses, found themselves on the front line of handling this crisis in their local communities. They had to make decisions around issues like social distancing policies and mask wearing, and businesses, should they be open or shut down, how to support the most vulnerable members of their community that can't go outside anymore, help transport food and medication. And all of a sudden, their work literally became a life or death matter. In a lot of different places. And we fortunately recognized that this is about to happen very early on. I remember it was so early because we still were in the office before the first lockdown here in Israel, and of course before the first lockdowns in the US. We started seeing an uptick in usage by our customers in Israel. They were just logging onto the platform much more than usual. We usually have a weekly or twice a week average usage rate from a lot of our customers, and all of a sudden we saw them logging on several times a day, including over the weekends, and just a much stronger need for the service than before. And we understood that there is a wave coming. We understood that in a few weeks, all the cities in Israel and in the US will be working day and night on this issue, and this will devour all the rest of their priorities, and thinking about providing features and going to market about everyday issues would just leave us on the side and irrelevant, and would is not what our customers need at that point in time. So the first thing we actually did, and the reason I remember we were still in the office, is that we actually did an internal hackathon. We stopped the company's work for about 3 days, all the company, from operations and marketing to data science and DevOps, and invited our customers, our employees, to look at the feedback we've been getting from our customers and rethink our entire product roadmap, create POCs for what we believe could be impactful features for the way local governments need to deal with COVID-19. And within about 3 days, we had 4 live MVPs that were already delivered to customers. 3 of them actually lived on and became the core features that we're selling today and that we've sold over the last year. The impact was immediate. We started seeing more inbound demand than before, quicker sales cycles than before, because our industry just moved into this emergency mode. And because we moved fast to react to that, we were the first ones to be able to offer solutions, while other companies only started reacting to that into May and June. So I think the interesting thing here was to understand that the mindset for our customers is going to change. It's going to accelerate. They're going to be very much a one-trick pony over the next few months, and harnessing our internal resources, our entire team, to rethink what we had planned for 2020 and do something different.
Yael, can I jump in with a small question?
Yeah, great.
I think Eyal sort of mentioned it, but I would like to ask Boaz, if it's okay. What was tougher in terms of the messaging to the employees, to your partners, as compared to your discussion with the investors, and how transparent was it in this very short period of uncertainty, and how did you communicate those discussions to the rest of the company? If you can share with us.
We can share everything. There's almost no secrets. It's a great question. I will say that everything is starting from previous years. Okay, it's a relationships of trust and leadership that you are building over the years. Okay, it's not, you can't change the communication and trust between all parties, board, investors, employees, in a day if you decide. This is something that you are building as a cultural thing. So it needs to be understood. And we were very transparent with everyone, because this is the time that you need your people to understand what you're doing and why, especially when you take hard decisions. And you need your board backup and advice about how and what, and get kind of like the sentiment around what we are doing. I can tell you that we were one of the, if I'm thinking in retrospective, one of our biggest point of discussion was, should we be one of the first that let people go? One of the first companies, okay? The press will grab to it and they will write on it, and this will hurt our brand, and should we wait more or not? And this was a point of discussion with the board, a lot of it. We decided, by the way, to do it because the business needed it and to act fast. We were one of the first, I think, 4th or 5th company that let go people in Israel and all over probably. But we were very transparent. We increased the communication on a magnitude of order. We had a board meeting every 3 days. From our perspective, not the board needed, we initiated it. We had all hands almost every morning with the company. to let them know how we are doing. So communication and the feel of control, okay? And we can see the opposite in other areas of our life now. Give the feeling of control, and that there is a leadership, and that you know, or you assume you know what you're doing, and the decisions are taken within taking the right data and the right kind of like mentality and everything. It gives comfort for everyone, for the board, for your employees, and also for our customers. And it was also important. We were very transparent with our customers, and Yael will touch it probably later on, but it was also one of our communication cycle that we were taking into account in such a thing. So over.
Thanks. I'm jumping over. Go ahead, Yael.
So I wanted to tie that in, this whole innovation process, to what's happening now with the whole work from home. So there's already hard task of innovation. Now, how do you add another layer of work from home, hybrid, part of the time in the office, part of the time at home? So the data we collected found that 79% of startups said work from home greatly impacted company culture, negatively impacted. And 80% said employees are working the same or more hours than before, struggling with finding some kind of work-life balance. So it's interesting to see how this whole new mix affects innovation, because it seems like it's not going anywhere. Some form of hybrid model will be here to stay. So Tzachi, that's a topic that you talk and you think about a lot. How do you think work from home has affected innovation?
Yeah, so again, thank you everyone for joining, and Boaz and Eyal, it's really great to hear your stories, and I've often been asked about what makes Israel so unique, and many times it's not the technology, it's the entrepreneurship, the ability to quickly swift and see an opportunity and go at it. But one of the things that we saw in the survey, and it's really interesting to hear your point of view, what I hear and what I see is it's really hard to innovate today. Look, I've been talking with people at Intel across the world, right? There's a lot of fatigue, right? People are feeling this Zoom world is not as easy as they originally thought and wanted to be. And people feel that the lack of water cooler conversation, coffee machine conversation, the ability to pull someone into the room and say, let's put it on the board and think it through has a big impact on innovation overall. I don't know, how did you go about doing these shifts in product focus? Did you do it physically? Did you do it with people working from home as well? And it's how have you dealt with that disconnect? And my feedback comes from many startups I work with, as well as people at Intel and other corporates.
So our big product, let's say, effort was on the first lockdown of Israel. So it wasn't only remote, it was also with the kids at home on your head and on your arms and whatever. I will say it wasn't hard. It wasn't the hardest thing. There was a sense of a mission and a sense of goal and a sense of urgency. And we decided to actually just to empower to extreme our people. Okay, this was the decision that we did, and we told people, just run, just do your thing, we trust you. You are here for enough time, you know what to do. We can't control anything or everything, just do your thing. Okay, so extreme trust, I will say, even from where today, we just let everything go. We actually worked like, I think, 4 or 5 different startups within the company, almost isolated. We were singing together, we were working together, but again, just go and do. So I think this is what enabled us also to run so fast and build it out.
Yeah.
Tzachi, looking forward, from what you see at Intel and with the startups you work with, what do you think, what skills do organizations have to develop in order to foster innovation remotely if it's here for the next couple of years?
Right. So first of all, Tzachi Weisfeld from Intel Ignite. We just opened registration for batch 4. So any of you that started a startup and you're at pre-A stages, you should let us know and see if it fits what we do. And we try to help also in figuring out how to deal with the current challenges, with the COVID-19 challenges. So if I don't think it's going to change soon. So we all know we're all going into another quarantine. So no one is going back to the way it used to be anytime soon. So we need to get used to it. And even afterwards, I think there's going to be a mix of working from home as well as working from an office. So it all changed. So if you look at the skills I think we need all to develop, and we're doing it with our startups, but it's critical, is how do you develop a strong message and a strong narrative that you can easily deliver over Zoom, over videos, short videos, something that Israeli founders are many times not that great at. So this is something super critical to do. So crashing it on Zoom, not crashing the system and the Zoom, but actually making it really, really strong, a strong message and delivery. It's very hard to keep people's attention. So how do you quickly get to the point and deliver a strong message? So creating a hook that will make them interested. On the other side, we need to get much better even at written communications. One of the things that people are expecting today is to read, these 4 pages that you can send them, they could read, and we're really good. Israelis are really good at flying over, being at an event, meeting you, drinking something, and making we're such strong personalities. But I think also getting through writing and having strong written messages is important. And definitely there's room for new digital tools. So we'll need to have new digital tools that will make this work better than what we're even doing right now, all of us here on these little screens, small screens in front of us. So better tools for working together, maybe local WeWorks. So people can do some work locally closer to their home versus going to a central office. And the last thing, or a couple of things, is one, be great if someone will develop a digital hugger that we can all get a little bit back to some exactly, Liat, yes. Because I think the lack of this physical interaction is something that has its toll. And the point I think that was mentioned a little bit earlier is how do we make this immersion, the experience that people were looking at these startups say, you guys are nuts, you're giving away all these t-shirts and all these swag, and everyone is getting their little dolls, and you're getting all these pizzas and beers, and come on guys, you've exaggerated. I don't think we've exaggerated. I think that created a very, very strong sense of ownership, partnership, part of the thing. So how do you do this remotely and making sure that all the employees, wherever they're at, are getting these t-shirts and everything that they need to do and be in order to immerse themselves in the brand, super critical. I think what I'm seeing now is we're becoming more like San Francisco. People are leaving much faster than they used to. They're not as engaged with their company and brand so much. So I hope we can fix that as well.
Thanks, Tzachi. Did the elbow bump was not enough. We'll have the digital hugger to hug and shake hands in the future, I hope. But the next topic I want to say is, okay, it's great to innovate, and obviously it's difficult, and we have a lot of insights about that. But once you have some kind of a product, how do you bring it to market? Because that was another huge challenge this year. So no conferences, no in-person meetings, no interaction. So it's crucial for startups to adapt their sales strategy. And in the data we collected, we saw that 60% of startups changed the sales strategy, with a large percent moving online. 35% shifted sales fully online, and 21% changed their target geography. So it's interesting here to hear the stories from startups. Eyal, we'll start with you. So without conferences, which I know you guys were really relying on conferences, how did you adapt to remote sales? How did you change the strategy?
So first, we share Bizzabo's pain for physical events being a thing of the past in 2020, because almost all of our lead generation was conference-based. We again, work with local governments. Local governments love to meet each other because they're by definition in different places. So they arrange a lot of meetings throughout the year, and those were great lead generation sources for us. We would fly out to a 70-person North Michigan seminar and meet everybody, get their business cards, and do all of our follow-up from there. The rest of the process was completely remote from us. We always did our sales via Zoom, so we were set up for that. But the lead generation part, we really took a big hit. There was a full quarter this year in Q2 where we generated only a handful of new leads because we were so conference reliant in the past. But I think one of the positive outcomes of this pandemic for us was that we leveraged that failure to really learn and improve from. And we spent the entire Q2 in ramping up other ways of lead generation. For us, the most effective one was actually cold calling, and literally calling, not just cold emailing, literally picking up the phone and calling people. In our industry specifically, it's very accessible. All organizations have their contact details online, and they're expected to answer the phone because constituents might be calling. And we found that to be extremely effective after we nailed the messaging. I was personally very much against it. My team wanted to push towards that direction. I said, what, these people are in the middle of a pandemic right now. Nobody will ever answer the phone. They're probably super busy. But we gave it a try after we saw emails weren't resonating, after we saw social media campaigns weren't resonating. Started just literally calling local governments across the US, and that turned out to be incredibly effective. We today ramped up this channel, which is of course much more cost effective, much more in our control, to be a even larger share in our leads than conferences used to be. We generate about twice as many leads per quarter from cold calling today as we used to generate from conferences in the past. So that new approach really resonated with us. And I think, for us, cold calling really worked, and I strongly recommend trying that. I didn't believe in that before. But generally speaking, I think that there was an interesting push to innovate in the ways we generate leads. We tried a bunch of other things that didn't work. Like we ran Twitter and LinkedIn campaigns that didn't generate a single lead, and we ran cold email campaigns that nobody opened the emails. And for us, cold calling really worked, and created today a much more sustainable basis for us, that once events will come back and once we ramp up other channels in parallel, we'll have this great starting point with the cold calling benchmark.
And I really love that, because I think that really illustrates the innovation of Israeli startups. It's like, okay, we have some kind of challenge. We're going to really hustle. Let's call everyone. And it's great to see that from the challenges of 2020, there are some things, some opportunities that came ahead. And for a lower cost and a higher success rate, you could generate client leads. So that's great to see. And Liat, it's interesting to get your opinion on this, because you work with a lot of international organizations and partners. So COVID brought a lot of challenges, as we're saying, and like Eyal here told how it could convert into opportunities. So what are the biggest opportunities that you see in terms of changing sales strategy, new channels?
So I'm speaking from a kind of a founder hat for my startup that is not quite into sales, but looking into validation. It's a Horizon Labs, a blockchain startup, but mostly from my position as chairman of the Zell program, where a vantage point to the students who are trying to come up with ideas, the Zell graduates, whether funded by the ZEP Fund or Zell graduates like Boaz. And so keeping up with them, I think we got to see a wide array, which definitely matched a lot of the numbers that came up in the research. So everyone did have to change, but I think you could probably look at it into two parts. In the first part, there was that initial shock, and Boaz described it really well in Bizzabo, a conference startup when travel goes out the window, changes and adapts. And I think that actually has implications on everybody else too. So beyond that first kind of shock period, whether it's hopping on the call and cold calling, or from what I've seen in a lot of startups, just cold LinkedIn messaging. And probably because of the availability of a lot of people at home, in the office, online, maybe, bored during Zoom calls, people were getting much more responses. So I think that ability to engage through LinkedIn and through the cold calling is one way. I think generally it's a flatter world. What I've seen certainly in the second half of the year is a lot more engagement for startups with virtual conferences. So instead of having to fly out to places and have, 500, 1,000 people there, you can have many more people there. And with technology and breakout rooms and an ability to really connect, and the fact that people are there to engage and want that engagement. So I think it's, on the one hand, obviously brought a lot of challenges, and you could see it in the data too, that while startups were still kind of hedging by not spending more money and not spending less money, but they were spending money a little bit differently. And I think this will play out really differently as well in terms of remote work is a challenge, but for startups, for a few startups that I've spoken to, it's also an opportunity to set up in different geographies and to find a remote sales representative in that place and go beyond areas. And in fact, the report highlighted one such case study, but I've heard that several times.
And if you're looking ahead, what do you think for 2021, 22? With the vaccine, are people going to go back to flying as much as before, or is some form of hybrid remote work, remote sales here to stay?
Well, even though I saw someone in the chat said that they're really as close to a digital hugger as you can get, and I am very curious about that, I'm going to go with Tzachi's point, and I think that in the end, we need those hugs and everything else that comes about it. So it's interesting in the I think it was a kind of like almost a 70-30 in the data for people who will keep flying and people who will really change the way that they fly. I think we humans are incredible at kind of shifting to realities, and I do believe that once flying starts, we will be at it again. Will it make some companies look at their travel budgets differently and maybe be a little bit more cautious? Will it make, it'll be really interesting. And Boaz, I'm sure you guys are thinking about how is this going to affect virtual conferences versus in conferences? Are we going to have much more hybrid conferences where a lot more people can join, but there will also be people there? I don't know. But my personal belief, based, I guess, on my personal plan is I do see myself traveling again soon.
If I could jump in and add, I can say that we budgeted for travel in H2 of this year, so we're assuming that H2 travel will come back to normal. On a personal level, I think I'll just travel less for one drink with someone in New York and travel back. We'll do that over Zoom, and more for more substantial events. That's my personal take, and I'm looking forward to it.
Did you budget the same as you had, pre-COVID?
A bit less, but more or less in the same domain, just starting H2. So we're optimistic about the state of the world, you can say.
Interesting. Okay. And Boaz, what about you guys here? So as you said, about a month after COVID began, you launched the new digital conference solution, and revenue almost doubled in 2020, which is insane achievement. So tell us about the sales strategy there. You're launching a new product. You already have a large client base. Was it more focused on maximizing revenue or increasing product adoption?
Well, so I can correct you and say that it's more than doubled in 2020, which is important. We had a little different, I think, market reaction. If you think about our customers, that kind of like a lot of them lost their jobs. Okay, they are event producers, event marketeers, and on the budget cuts, this was one of the first kind of like job that were cut out. So we were in a different aspect regarding selling to who we are selling and what should we do. So the first thing that we did, we decided to kind of like take care of our customers. Okay, this was a sales strategy for us. Okay, taking the current customers and just digital hug them, as you said. Okay, we postponed renewals, we gave discounts, we extended the contracts, and we kind of like been there for them. Okay. for everything they need. And once we understand kind of like where we are going with this digital events, what is a digital event? It's actually kind of like a live TV show, right? This is crazy for something that was just used to produce events, is now need to produce digital live TV shows, which are events at the end. We understood that we need to teach them actually how to do it. And this was our kind of like go-to-market strategy. So the first thing that we did, we just eat our own dog food. We launched a virtual event, one of the first in the industry, and one of the first probably in this pandemic, which is a crazy story by itself. New York was in quarantine. We kind of like smuggled all the equipment from the elevator at night, and kind of like real startup things, a bit illegal and stretched out, but the event was amazing because all of our customers was actually sitting on their homes and did nothing. So we planned for 500 or 600 people, and we got 6,000 getting into the events. And right after it, and it was unbelievable because it was all the kind of like marketing teams that we were running and chasing for years after in events and in LinkedIn emails and in cold calls and whatever, everyone was just registering and coming in, all the event team of Amazon and Twitter and Bloomberg, like everyone was just coming in. And right after the event, we understood that we need, again, to teach them more. So we did behind the scenes event, how we produced it and what we did. And this was kind of like, I think, a recognition and brand recognition that Bizzabo cares about the industry. And this was our best probably lead generation into either existing customers or a lot of new ones to come in.
And with that thought of how do you put the customer really in the center, right? So you said that you gave the product free for a certain amount for a couple of months to clients. You gave them refunds. You helped them kind of get out of the crisis. So
yeah, definitely. We didn't charge at first because it was kind of like a rescue, right? Here you have what to do. So all the existing customers just got our kind of like virtual offering that we're selling a lot of money now, but they got it free for a quarter or two, I can't remember, and we even extended for some. We kind of like wanted to get the industry running again, okay? This was kind of like where we were aiming for.
And it's interesting to see about how that ties to the whole online sales, because a lot of the sales shifted online this year. And Robert, you're the expert there. You're investing in B2C, SMB startups, so it'd be great to hear your opinion a little bit on that. So how do you think startups can develop a closer relationship, but online with their clients?
Yeah, I think it starts with actually having that aspiration to have the relationship. So, as more and more sales move online, as performance marketing becomes more important, it's an incredible scalable tool. But one of the issues with scalability is performance marketers tend to think of these things in the macro, right? That, thinking about CPA and thinking about there's, kind of a bunch of robots on the other end of this performance marketing funnel that I'm going to convert, and I'm going to have a funnel, and X% convert, and a CPA, and then you can lose focus on the relationship, and that's really the micro. It's you're acquiring a customer on the other side, and so I think it's important to use the performance marketing, all those tools that come with it, while remembering there's a relationship and doing everything to foster the relationship. Exactly what Boaz just said in terms of their strategy, which is really give the customer what they need. Because CPA is extremely important, but it means nothing without an LTV, without the lifetime of that user. And so by developing that relationship from the get-go, you increase your brand affinity, you increase stickiness, and then you generate LTV, and then it becomes a virtuous cycle where you're able to get all the benefits on both sides of that funnel, both in terms of the ingoing CPA and eventually the lifetime value. So I think it has to start from the top, which is telling all teams, customer success, performance marketing, everything. There's a user on the other side, there's a customer, think about what they need, satisfy them, and really focus on them as a relationship, not as just some transaction that you're trying to convert and move on to the next one.
And can you give us a bit more about the whole, after you're acquiring the user on the customer support side? Because we collected data about that, and we saw that 74% of startups think that online customer service is going to become a main competitive differentiator in the next year or two. So this is a way to get closer to clients. It's basically a marketing effort. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, totally. I think customer support and success is a key. It's part of marketing. It's support is. It's not to fix bugs, right? It's most of all, it's to maintain the stickiness of your product, and develop that relationship. And once you've acquired a customer, however you got there, whether it's marketing, sales, etc., then it's really up to your success and your support teams to give them everything they need, from a rapid assistance to whatever it is they need. Maybe they need a discount, maybe they need to pause their subscription for a month, maybe they need some other service. And I think it's important to have a success and support team that has some degrees of latitude of what they can do, right? So if they have to always ask someone, hey, can I do this? It's not going to work. So they have to have within some degrees of what makes sense. I think a fairly wide leash to act quickly, to provide a customer that they're actually chatting with, give them what they need in order to increase that brand affinity and just keep them longer and loving your product. I mean, that's what it's all about. And so I think that relationship then accentuates through every single aspect of your company. Definitely.
And I want to connect that to our last topic, which is fundraising. So, okay, you have a great product, you're selling it, but now how are you pitching to investors? And a lot of Israeli companies are receiving funding from investors abroad. So how are companies managing that whole process now? So in our research, we found that there's a clear division in the market, which we could also see with the stats of fundraising in the ecosystem, that early stage ventures, those that raised under 10 million, are struggling, and the later stage companies are kind of in a golden era, as we would call it. We found that the earlier stage companies reported less interest from international investors, shrinking check sizes, and more difficulty in online pitches. So Yifat, I'm gonna tie you in here. That's your expertise. So tell us a little about what you're seeing in the market in terms of fundraising now, and what do you think is going to happen in the next year?
Sure. First and foremost, I think that the difficulty of early stage may have been here regardless of COVID or not COVID, because I think we've hit a period of everybody is trying to get into those, the unicorn story. The check sizes are growing. We're having a lot more types of investors that are looking to put large checks in later rounds, and therefore the pro rata amount of early stage compared to late stages is ridiculously low, but not only because of COVID. Obviously, also when you're doing early stage and you want to invest early stage and you have to do it through Zoom, it's not as classical as it may be in later stages, because there's not much to figure out other than seeing how who are you invested with, and those dynamics of getting to know the entrepreneurs are easier when you meet with them and not look through the Zoom. But I want to try and be optimistic, and I think that few of the trends, and I don't think that late stage and unicorn story or decacorn stories are going away, and there's a lot more money coming in that is interested to go into those companies. However, a few things are happening. One, valuations are going very quickly up because there is a huge demand. And all of a sudden, some of the investors are thinking again whether they want to be in the mid stage or go a little earlier. So this is, I think, good news. I also think that provided that we're still on Zoom, however, I'm very optimistic like the rest of the friends here. I think we're going to very quickly forget we were grounded. The minute that, we can fly, we're all going to, go back to flying. But in the meantime, I think that the issue of the Zoom should make entrepreneurs think more closely on, trying to figure out if they can get in touch with the local investors. There is a lot of money, or relative amount of money, within Israeli early stage VCs, Competition, even in the early stages, is large because there is more, I think, even more money than opportunities. So early stage investors are here. I think it's easier to do conversion of around, with Israeli investors compared to, global, because Israelis, even on the Zoom, can assess you better than in a US or German-based early stage VC. I just read this morning that the Innovation Authority has created a new program which entices the early stage VCs or other entities to invest early, because they're providing some kind of a very lucrative benefit if the company does well. So I think that actually 2021 is going to be a good year for early stage. And again, I'm really urging everybody to be in touch with the local investors. There's a bunch of circles, whether it is the VCs or angels that have a little bit of difficulty in the beginning of COVID, but they're back in business now. And I think that the pockets are going to be open again, and we'll see it in 2021.
Yael, can I add one thing here?
Yeah.
Actually, it's about you. Everyone should look at Yael's post on LinkedIn that you made a few weeks ago, which it's about startups when you're fundraising to, people are taking much less risk. Yes, there's a lot of money in the world, and I think everything you just said is absolutely true, but people are taking less risk. They, later stage means less risk, and people are much less inclined to fund ideas and promises and visions and dreams. So, show revenue as early as you can. The potential for revenue, like exactly what you're going to do to get revenue. And of course, 10 times better, actually show revenue. So don't wait, get out in the market, do whatever you need to do to make those early sales. It will change the game when it comes to fundraising. Even early stage, and especially early stage.
Definitely. And I think when we spoke, you also told me, right, that the world is much more open now with different tools, right, that startups can get some sort of traction really early on to even bring any, even minimal data to investors to show, okay, there's some proven traction here. It's not just a dream or a vision.
Yeah. And I think, again, we play more in B2C and SMB tech, but even in Israel, there's a lot of startups, don't think about Israel because either it's not, people don't care and it's not credited and we're going to think big, but even, it's much easier to, whether it's from cold calling, knowing people, et cetera, to generate sales in Israel. Yes, it's not as, they're going to say, show me in the US, doesn't matter here, but at least it shows something, and it shows at least the model, and at most, the hustle, and that you can actually bring money into your bank account from customers. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. So, and otherwise, all the different tools that even were talked about here, from cold calls to LinkedIn to so many different tools out there to get to customers, and focus very narrow. There's this concept of 1,000 true fans. It can even start with 100 true fans. Just get 100 people to pay for your product anywhere in the world, and that's the starting point. You can think about the thousands and the millions later, but at least start somewhere as fast as you can when you're early stage.
Definitely. I agree with you there. And let's see, on the Nimrod comes from the legal side. Let's see from the transactions that you're working on now, what's kind of your forecast for what's expected in 2021, and what can you recommend to startups? Okay, well, first of all, thanks for having me here and a part of this Startup Snapshot. We've had an incredible year here at the firm, at the law firm that I work in, and I also manage a consulting firm called Consiglieri that is supposed to give a little bit higher level business consulting to startups in strategic transactions. And we've had a roller coaster of a year, similar to the entire industry. We were preparing for Armageddon, basically, in our law firm, including taking loans and investing and firing people. And in retrospect, we performed tens of percentage points better than our best year ever because of our high-tech practice and because of the amount of money that reached our high-tech practice. And it made me think a lot about this, because I'm talking about people's lives and people who work at the firm and the entrepreneurs that I represent, all of whom were preparing for Armageddon, and many of whom saw the uptick in the business. And my thoughts are that a lot of money was printed to solve the problems that a crisis like this causes on a macroeconomic scale.
And whilst it's uncomfortable to think about it this way, about 75% of any population in a Western country is going to be annihilated financially for 40 or 50 years to come by such a crisis, because our kids will have to pay back the debt that we're creating now. However, when the money is printed into the market in the trillions of dollars in the US, and then it flows to institutional investors and to venture capital investors, and then it flows to the public markets, but specifically to the companies in the public markets that are showing intense growth, which are the tech companies, what you have is suddenly a very big layer of money sitting in the large tech corporates, who are now the top valued companies in the public markets, and sitting with institutionals. And you also have an appetite to gamble on tech for people who used to invest in lower risk avenues. I agree with Robert that they won't go high risk at very early stage early on, but even people shifting from real estate and traditional retail to high tech, even by 10%, means tens and hundreds of millions of dollars more to this industry. And then all of this new money is looking at this industry, at this global industry. The world is flat. Everybody said that today. And where does Israel stand from that perspective? Where do the people in this webinar stand against that money? Well, that money to us is, and that's what I've seen, and I predict it'll continue in 21. That's just torrential rain. It's because if you look at now, if you step into the shoes of an investor who now wants to allocate more money to tech, pound for pound, when a US Californian company or a UK company is nerfed of the ability to properly deploy a bunch of salespeople into the field, expensive salespeople, and more people are selling and supporting customers on Zoom, pound for pound, how does the Israeli startup company do? And what I've seen this year is that it is super attractive because the tech is great, the people can still work lean here, and the mindset is lean, and apparently Israelis can generate more sales on Zoom once they're pound for pound, once they don't have to be on the ground and get the salespeople. So we've seen a huge increase in investments, high quality investments, mostly later stage, but I've also seen a lot of early stage. And I predict it'll only increase in 2021. I've heard many investors tell me that whilst their strategy was to invest $10 million in one company, they've split it into $3 million tickets for 3 companies and going in earlier. Yes, they want to see revenues, but also companies can generate more revenues earlier thanks to the streamlined online sales and digital sales. But then comes another challenge, and that's the word of caution that I wanted to say here and send everyone with. When there's a lot of money, there's a lot of demand, it also drives a little bit of the supply of innovation. You've got more and more companies that aren't ready, and you've got more and more money that isn't sophisticated. A lot of the companies that I represent, their main challenge is selecting the right investors and not jumping into it. The investors that can bring them added value and are experienced, and have them as leads. And a lot of the and not necessarily fall, or commit themselves to investment paths that are not yet mature. A lot of going public is going on in different markets that are not your mainstream markets. Let's see how that pans out a little bit. Everybody's talking about SPACs. Everybody's talking about TASE-ups and all that stuff. It might be relevant for some companies. Let's see where that goes. Once you have money, you leverage your offers and you try to get the money from the best investors possible and see if they value you. See if a lot of money in the industry, you were worth an investment. That's important to sort of get a mirror on ourselves in 2021. But otherwise, I'm very optimistic for the people here, for the Israeli market, because I think that pound for pound, Israeli startups rocket and are now getting a chance to prove it without having to spend, I'll expand to the US, so I need another $3 million for my financing now, instead of, well, maybe I could do it gradually now since everybody's a little bit in hibernation. So yeah, good luck to everyone here in capitalizing.
Thank you, Nimrod. So it's good to see both you and Yifat very positive on the market. That's good to hear. And I just want to wrap up with the stories because this is, I don't think you guys want to miss this, the stories of fundraising of Bizzabo and Zencity. So Boaz, tell us quickly how it worked. You raised 138 million from Insight a couple of months ago. Can you tell us about the fundraising process? Did you meet the investors? Was it via Zoom? And do you have any tips for earlier stage founders?
Work hard, build a valid product. It's hard, fundraising, it's hard, even though this one was kind of like the fastest ever for us. But raising funds is, it's a work. We did 98% of it over Zoom, like everyone. But again, as I stated before, the relationship with insights that Bizzabo have goes years back. When we were young and without a product market fit, and they kind of like saw our progress and our ARR growth and our team growth and our execution abilities. So, and in most of the rounds, usually it's like this. You have a relationship that you develop with more late stage funds than you are currently in. We are currently doing the same for the past few years with venture that are bigger than insights and building the relationship. So we had the personal relationships built before the pandemic, and after it we just leveraged this relationship over Zoom. There are some advantages to do fundraising over Zoom. You can have a side Slack channel between internal that you can swipe things and be aligned. So there are some advantages over it. And I think the biggest one is speed. Usually you don't need to fly over. Nobody is waiting for meetings, etc. You can just set a meeting in the morning and meeting in the evening and late night or early mornings and just get all this process runs very fast. I can tell you that one of our kind of like statement at the beginning with Insight was we want to finish the fundraising before the holidays. And if you can do it, we will not go to waste the money. We didn't need it. Of course, we wanted it. Okay, everyone wants such an amount, but this was only available. The daughter is coming over. Welcome to work for remote. So it was only available. We were only able to do it such fast because of Zoom. This was the only reason for the speed.
Amazing story. And Eyal, was it the same for you guys? I know Salesforce Ventures entered your last round. So did you know them before you built a relationship, or it's a new relationship?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with Boaz's message that the most important thing for fundraising is to build an impactful product and a good company. But in our case, we had Salesforce Ventures join us within the pandemic, which was generally our first experience fundraising outside of Israel. All of our other investors are Israeli. So to me, this is just how you fundraise from people who are in a different country. You do it via Zoom, same way we do sales. And we had a great process with them. I think we started talking a bit before the pandemic. Then when the pandemic hit, it took us both by surprise in the sense of how busy we both were. They were in helping their portfolio. We were head down serving our customers. So we delayed everything for a couple of months. And then we got back to it around May with a lot of excitement from the growth we've seen during the pandemic, and had, as Boaz said, a much faster pace of meetings. We could talk twice a day. We could move legal drafts around quicker, which in corporate VCs requires some effort. And overall, we had a great experience with them, and we were very, very happy to have them on board. I definitely relate to the sentiment that was shared earlier by Yifat and Robert that the later stage companies have more possibility, because we could talk numbers, we could show our traction. We had references from our existing investors that know the new investors coming in. We had the relationship with Salesforce Ventures. We met in person in the summer when they were in Israel their UK office. So we had a lot of that going for us, and I think that made it a lot easier. I think it would have been more challenging to raise our first round with someone we've never met when we can't meet in person.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So I think we'll wrap up now. Thank you guys for joining. And like I said, send us an email if you have any topics like the ones we spoke about today that you want us to include in our next data collection efforts. And we'll share all the insights and all the data with everyone. So thank you guys.
Yael, thank you.
Yael.
Good job.
Thank you, Yael. Amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you for organizing us all here. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone, thank you for having us.